Welcome to the Town of Hilton Head Island Gullah Geechee Land and Cultural Preservation Task Force meeting. This is September the 12th, and we are officially calling this meeting to order. I want to thank those of you who are in the public for being here, and certainly want to acknowledge my colleagues and the staff here at the Town of Hilton Head. Karen, are we in compliance with FOIA?
Yes, sir, we are.
Thank you. Would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Mr. Abdul Malik,
Here.
Mr. Simmons,
Here.
Mr. Campbell,
Here.
Mr. Hens,
Here.
Mr. Stevens,
Here.
and Ms. Green is excused.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, we have an agenda that was sent out, and at this time, I would like to, if there are no corrections or revisions, entertain a motion to approve the agenda that we have set before us.
I'd make that motion to approve the agenda.
Okay, Mr. Malik moves to approve the agenda. Is there a second? Mr. Campbell seconds. Okay, all those in favor, just raise your right hand. Okay, it passes unanimously. None opposed? Okay, very good. We have some minutes from July the 11th, and hopefully you had a chance to read through those. If there are no revisions or corrections, I would like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the July 11th meeting.
So moved.
Mr. Malik is offering the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Simmons is seconding. Okay, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Those opposed?
I'll have to abstain, I wasn't
You
there.
abstain. Mr. Hens is abstaining. Motion carries with a majority, with Mr. Hens abstaining at this time. Okay, do we have any appearance by citizens?
No, sir, we do not.
Okay. Want to certainly take time to recognize any of our councilmen who are here. Councilman Brown, I see. Thank you for being here. Are there any other citizens present who would like to speak at this time?
Tracy Young. Is that Tracy Young?
Tracy Young? Yes, you may approach.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Tracy Young.
Yes.
I hold the pop-up shops on Simmonsville, and I'm just coming for clarification, I guess, of pop-up shop definitions. I contact Ms. Buckaloo, Eileen Buckaloo, with the town. We've been holding the pop-up shops at Simmonsville for probably a year, and he got a call, Mr. Simmons got a call about us not having proper licensing, I guess. So I contact the town. First it was with Miss Amy, I believe, and then they put me in contact with Miss Eileen Buckaloo, who then in return told me that each person that comes to the pop-up shop has to have a business license with the town in order to come and sell their goods at the pop-up shop. Okay, so I'm trying to figure out what the difference is between like a flea market where they don't require this in definition of a pop-up shop. So.
Okay. Okay, thank you. We have had this question come before us, and we are certainly looking into it. I'm sorry that I don't have a good answer for you right now, but it's something that staff is aware of, I can tell you that, and the question has been raised.
Okay. Do you know when?
I do not know when.
Okay.
Does anybody from staff comment can answer that question?
Yes, is there anyone from staff that can answer that question for us? I think Missy's going to take a stab at it.
Missy Lewitt, Community Planning Manager. We do have a different definition between what is considered an open air sales. And I think what this is somebody operating under open air sales. And yes, they do have to have a business license. I can certainly work with Ms. Tracy on getting all the answers that she's looking for outside of this meeting. But if you could give me your contact information, I'd be happy to work with you on it.
Can I ask a quick question? I mean, are we open for quick questions, or is just, that's just basically it?
You can ask.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I guess the question is, thank you. Ms. Eva, I think the discussion that she had, as, I invited her to come to the meeting, is it a simple fact that she needs to change the definition of what she's doing? Is that the issue? Do you know?
Even to operate an open air sale in the town of Hilton Head limits, you still need a business license for that. And so we just need to have them apply for a business license to then operate in a property that's zoned for open air sales, which it sounds like she's doing. We
Okay,
can look
so-
into the specifics of this particular case and make sure that we get the definitions, what's required, who you go to, and all of that mapped out.
Yeah, I guess the main issue is that it seemed like she did all of those steps, and for some reason was still basically denied. So I'm not sure, and there seemed to have not been an explanation other than one activity or event is defined one way and the other is defined another, which still didn't lend her the opportunity
Right.
to have the event that had been held several times without any real incident. So I don't know what has changed.
I would recommend that we work on her particular case, who she worked with. It sounds like Ms. Bucklew and others, and we'll kind of work through how it was reviewed, how we could communicate more effectively, what the path forward is, so we can get it resolved.
All right, I mean, and I guess this comes up because, there's been, as Chairman Stevens alluded to, there's been several conversations about the opportunity for the neighborhoods to establish areas and places where they can exhibit their goods and wear. And it seemed like that was all well and good until it started happening.
Correct.
And then, of course, when it started happening, there seemed to have been a lot of hurdles to hump, to cross, and then it's not allowed. So,
Right.
My concern is that, if this task force, if we put forth these efforts and we are told that these events are going to be supported,
Right.
and then when time comes, the support to continue for our community to exhibit their wear, there's, we run into what we feel normally happens when our community come. We get, 9,000 different things that come up that we seem to not be able to continue or move forward. So, I mean, that's, I'd like to hear what happens with this because it seems like one time again, we have, no path forward.
Sure. We'll put this up as a discussion item on next month's agenda,
Okay,
okay?
all right,
Does that work?
thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Missy.
Okay.
And thank you, Ms. Young, for bringing that to our attention. And this is just another example of how the cultures exist in our community and just not having a clear understanding of how we can make it work. I'm hoping and trusting that staff will look at a way to find out how to make it work. And as Mr. Simmons said, not just a kind of a closed door that we just can't make it happen. We just have to make sure that this is also, I think, a part of another item that's on our agenda is that's the educational program. And that we understand that working in this community and certainly trying to preserve this culture, that we have a clear understanding of how we operate in the community. I remember years and years ago when we had the Gullah Flea Market, and many of you remember that as well. And we had merchants and people come all the time. So we just need a little clarification on that. And I think we can figure this out. Thank you, Missy. Okay, moving on to discussion items. Critical path discussion on Gullah Geechee report, all recommendations. And I believe that this is going to be shared with us by Missy Lewick once again. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Missy Lewick, Community Planning Manager, again, for the record. In your packet today was a document of all of the recommendations in the report, instead of just the top 16 that we had been reporting out on. And I wanted to, both go through what we've done with this report, but also kind of talk about the next steps for how we're going to go through this, how we proceed with you monthly, and go from there. So today, we have all of the recommendations in the report in one critical path document. So what we used to talk about, the top 16 projects and the other 21 are merged together in one document now. And then we also have, we're targeted to have our consultant present on Mid-Island District next month to this body. We're still hopeful that we'll be able to have a preview of our education program, the Gullah History and Cultural Education Program, to this body in November. That may get pushed back. Of course, that's before Town Council on September 20th. And then we need to have our senior planner, cultural and historic preservation person in place to be able to implement that program. I kept it on there, parked on the November 7th date, just because I'm still hopeful that we'll get there and get staffed up and be able to move that along in the fourth quarter as it was programmed. But just know that that may move back a month. And then we intend to monthly always bring back to you this critical path document for review and to discuss the implementation steps and progress that we're making on implementing it. So the report in front of you was organized in, basically we have color-coded, the priority recommendations are in orange, and then the blue color are the remaining 21, or the other 21 recommendations. So when you look through the report, you'll notice if it's a path item that's in orange, again, that's the priority, the top 16 priority, and blue would be the other 21. But again, they're bundled up again as it was organized in the original report, where you had 3 main implementation categories: cultural preservation, public policies, and heirs property. And then there were subcategories within each of those main implementation strategy buckets. And so we've reorganized the report back into the structure that was identified in the report. And our goal is to go over the path that we've been down as far as implementation goes, our progress notes, and where we hope to go to advance each goal forward. So what we've done with the presentation before you, we've included all of the items from the cultural preservation implementation strategy. We've included all of the recommendations from the heirs property strategy, and then just the top 4 within public policy, and because it's extremely long, and so we've saved those for the rest of them for a future meeting. Certainly they're all located in the report that's in paper in front of you today, so all of them are included in the document. I don't know how much we're actually going to get through today, because when we talk about progress steps and what we're going to do to advance them, we haven't talked in a meeting in some time about the other 21, so it might be that you're seeing some of those implementation paths and progress steps for the first time. So, but that's how it's been reorganized in front of you today, so I just wanted to get you acclimated to the new structure. And hopefully this will help walk us through in a more organized fashion how we're implementing. I think you'll notice a lot of themes in implementation, especially in the cultural preservation strategy. And I put on your desk today as well the Office of Cultural Affairs report, and you'll notice that there's quite a few implementation steps that are achieved through the efforts of their heritage tourism strategy. So you'll see that as a critical path or a progress step quite a bit when we're going through the cultural preservation steps. Those themes or implementation themes are at the back of the report that's in the packet. They're on page 19 of that. Some of the other major implementation steps that are necessary to advance quite a few of the projects within this document are to hire our senior planner of cultural and historic preservation staff member, which we currently have that position out and we're seeking applications. That position was noted on the list that you received last week with all of our Town of Hilton Head job opportunities, but certainly if you have people that you would like to recruit for this position, certainly steer them in the direction of that posting. We would love to get that filled right away. And of course, we need someone on staff to implement a lot of these critical path steps and progress steps. So you'll notice that there are some themes in there, and certainly having a staff member in-house to execute is definitely one of those important steps to getting this accomplished. So that's kind of the overall structure. And then here in cultural preservation, so we've grayed out public policy, heirs property, and in cultural preservation, there's the 4 main subcategories, and we're going to start with the top one, research, education, and interpretation. And then we dive into CP1, and that strategy is colored orange, so that was in our top 16. Okay, so that's kind of what the structure looks like, and that's how we've structured it here in the presentation.
Could you go back one slide?
Yes. And this one would be on page 1 of the written report that's in your packet. And we tied that to, I don't think the mouse, anyway. It says page 1 after the report item there to tie it back to the written document that's in, the presentation ties back to the report that's in the packet. Okay, so this one's on page 1. And what this is, we've gone over this path and these progress steps before, but this is to promote the use of the Heritage Library Foundation's resources and to encourage research into history and genealogy. And we've taken the step to launch the USCB Heirs Property Family Research Project in February of this year. And we have another action step to upgrade what we're calling now the Gullah Resource Center. We have a education and resource document page on the Gullah website that we have, where we have all of this information, the information about family compound, family subdivision. So that section on our website already has an education section, and we hope to make it a more interactive 24/7 resource center. And it's a place where we can house, it already includes information about this program and the Heirs Property Family Research Project, but it may not be somewhere that people are actively seeking this information. So we want to make it more of a publicly facing page. It's buried, I think I showed it to you 2 months ago when we met, but it's very deep in our website. And we hope to make this resource center a little bit more user-friendly and somewhere that can be more easily found on our website. And so we already have, again, a lot of this information on our website, and so we just hope to repackage it in a way that it's more useful and people are able to access that information regularly. And you'll see what we're calling Gullah Resource Center repeated in many implementation strategies throughout the critical path steps for a number of different report recommendations. So, but this critical path and progress steps haven't changed from the last time you saw this report 2 months ago.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Is there a way that you can monitor the traffic to the resource center as well as the Heritage Library
I can
for
check.
the use of this particular
Yep.
effort?
I can check on that with our web administrator to see if we can track this page or a future page that we make for hits and number
Okay.
of impressions, that kind of thing. Yep. Tracking. Okay. Okay, so now we're on to CP2. This one is in blue. Again, this and the next 5 are all in blue. So these were on that, the other recommendations or the other 21 that weren't in the top 16 priority. And they all, CP2 through CP, CP4 include, well, actually through CP6 include some collaboration with the Office of Cultural Affairs in the implementation strategy. So you'll see here for initiate fundraising effort to expand cultural programs that teach traditional Gullah ways and support physical development of key interpretive sites. There's the heritage tourism strategy that's in the Office of Cultural Affairs report. Again, that was placed on your desk today. And a lot of those implementation steps are within the appendices section of this report. And if you have questions about some of that, I should add that a staff member, Shay Farrar, has been helping out with putting together both this presentation and the recommendations, married up with the top 16 and other 21. And she is here if you have questions about a lot of the Office of Cultural Affairs steps in their strategic plan and how they help to implement what's here in the Gullah Culture Preservation Project Report. So we're going to see that looking to that heritage tourism strategy is included in the critical path and progress steps for this item as well as the next item to adapt and expand the interpretive themes from the Gullah Cultural Heritage Corridor Management Plan. And that, again, is identified in the Heritage Tourism Strategy, and it's detailed in Appendix 1 of this document. So again, I know that we have not gone through all of these other 21 report items and a progress and path for completion. So also, you may not have ever looked at the Office of Cultural Affairs Strategic Plan before, so this is a lot of information that we're throwing at you right now. And I just wanted to let you know that I think we can achieve success by working together. Also point out that the Office of Cultural Affairs Director position is also one of the vacancies we have, and it was included in that job list that was sent to you all as well. Certainly, there's a lot of implementation steps that have some overlap with the goals and objectives of the Gullah Geechee Task Force. Certainly, any recruiting or sharing of that opening with anyone within your networks would be much appreciated. So CP4 is a self-guided tour. This is very similar to the prior one. It also is to promote and enhance our culture HHI trail that we have already in place. And a lot of the progress steps are already in motion or already have been implemented through the Office of Cultural Affairs again. CP5 is a graphically consistent wayfinding and wayside exhibit system throughout the island. There are signs in the progress steps here on the cultural trail. There's a pamphlet, and then there's some QR code implementation as well. So certainly there could be potentially more done, but just want to go through these, and then maybe at the next meeting we can kind of gauge the progress and implementation, and have we achieved this report objective or not. So I don't know that we want to grade ourselves today because it's a lot of information, but we want to get to a point down the road where we're taking the time out of the meeting to say, have we achieved this goal or not, and that we have some consensus that we've implemented this report item fully. CP6 is also within the other 21 program bucket to establish a program for local students to conduct oral history interviews. There are some critical path ways to get there that are identified here. There's been no progress made to date yet on this item. Certainly any input on that would be welcome, either now or in the future. We could talk through this one. CP7 has been in front of you before, and we've talked about it the last several meetings. This was one of our high priority top 16 projects to establish the program to educate town officials, school teachers, and others on Gullah culture. And this is, we have, of course, created and taken through this body the Gullah History and Cultural Education Program, which I mentioned is going before Town Council, a resolution on September 20th. And hopefully that will be on its way, and we'll get the program rather fleshed out. And again, we promised that that program would come back to this body to be previewed in advance of its implementation to staff.
Okay, can we ask a quick question here,
Yes.
brother, as we go along? And I should have probably given you a better introduction, but Missy, of course, is filling in with the task force while that position is open to find that historic preservation administrator, and I'm glad that you do have some more help. And Missy and I have gotten together and kind of gone through some of these and trying to have strategy about our meetings, and I don't know that we are going to be able to do a lot because there is a lot of information that we need to take in. But the question was raised earlier about the reading for the educational program. Will that require 2 readings from town council? Or will it be passed in the next meeting? Or wherever that vote comes out?
I believe it's just one reading, as it's a resolution, but I can get back to you on that.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's one, but I will let you know.
And when you mentioned this before, there was some hesitation because of the positions that are open on the staff, right? You said we might be able to implement it, but it might get pushed back because we're waiting to figure that why.
Yes, the goal and what was outlined in the materials to enact the program was that we would have it off the ground in the last quarter of this year, and that we would begin its implementation. Certainly, it was written into that program that the person that would be implementing the program and offering the education course is the senior planner, cultural and historic preservation person, which is a vacant position. So we would like to have that person in place to be able to implement the program.
Yeah, just wanted to clear that up. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. CP8 is to utilize interactive approaches to interpretation to better engage current and potential new audiences and young people. Certainly there are implementation steps within the Office of Cultural Affairs, and we also envision that Gullah Resource Center that we talked about before, that more robust online presence to be part of the critical path to implement this particular item. And there's some progress noted as well. And then for CP9, coordinate the promotion of the island's Gullah-related attractions with state and regional cultural heritage organizations and attract more visitors to the island's Gullah sites. Again, there's implementation within the Office of Cultural Affairs strategic plan. And now we're into the subcategory of heritage tourism, CP10. CP10 through 13 are all in the other 21 priority level. So CP10 is promote Gullah cultural and resources more prominently. You'll see a lot of these recommendations are very similar to each other, and you can see why a lot of them, the path that we've identified is within the cultural affairs work and their strategic plan. Provide technical and financial support to businesses whose products and or services are strongly tied to Gullah culture. In this one, there are some critical paths to work with NYPD and other community organizations, score coordination and whatnot. I understand that if we were to arrange some additional meetings with NYPD, there's a theme that they're involved in some more than one implementation step, and we could make use of a meeting to discuss a number of report recommendations with that entity. and how we can collaborate to attain this goal, which requires collaboration. Number 12 is establish a Gullah authenticity certification program. And this is also some of the critical path includes NYPD again. There has been some progress to use the logo that's been part of the branding for all of the work with this program, and all of the implementation from the task force has included that branding. So number 13 is to use information from the Economic and Fiscal Impact Study for Beaufort County and the Arts and Economic Prosperity 5 report. And again, this is a coordination step, and the critical path has been identified here. So far, there's not been progress made to date, but certainly it could be added to a list to have a meeting with NYPD, and there could be a number of report items, strategies with community groups to discuss, but we could put together all of the recommendations. I think the past conversations with some of these groups were only for implementation of those projects that were within the top 16. Again, this is another 21 sort of bucket of priorities here. So number 14 was one that is in the top 16 priority. You can see it's in orange here again. And this is the open air market. There has been some progress. There was a market held at Low Country Celebration Park. There was a critical path identified to meet with NYPD and talk about them to develop a strategic plan and implement a regular market. We are going to look at, we came up with a plan to coordinate with other area markets and work on best practices, how they implement theirs. Could we piggyback on another market and just have possibly a Gullah section within those markets that are already open, off the ground and running. So there could be some implementation steps that include baby steps to get there to maybe a standalone regular market.
May I add a comment here?
Sure.
And I just want to say, I think that the effort that was spoken of by Ms. Jones could utilize some support from the town, in as much as once we get those kinks worked out, and if they're going to be, having those opportunities in the neighborhoods,
Yes.
I think it would be a good opportunity to partner with that effort as well in terms of promoting it, to a broader audience.
Yes.
Okay?
Yep.
And again, I think that was kind of sort of part and parcel of what we were hoping to try and establish when we said that the open air markets we were hoping would be community-based and not just park-based, but in our communities. And that platform is certainly a decent platform to do that.
Yes. Agreed. Okay, now we're in the next subcategory of preservation planning. The three items that are in this subcategory are all noted in pages 7 through 8 in the report. They include Office of Cultural Affairs. In them, we can look at them briefly, but I think too, going through the implementation plan with Office of Cultural Affairs, and then looking at the progress and the critical path that we've identified here, we would welcome feedback on achieving these report goals. There's a other issue section, and this is where one of our high priority projects is. and that's to recognize the island's Gullah associated churches as an important facet of Gullah culture. And this is one where we have done a number of progress steps. Community development staff and communications director have processes in place to communicate regularly with these churches. But we could work on inclusion of more standard operating procedures within our internal documents to make sure, and it's especially highlighted with some of the vacancies that we have of late, to make sure that these are part of standard operating procedures and maybe aren't just formalized with the person who happens to be in that chair at that time. Because certainly a lot of the implementation steps with the items within this report have been communicated, and there have been staff trainings, but may not have gone to the extent of having that procedure or process written down as a standard operating procedure. And so that's what we recommend to make sure that it's folded into our ongoing operations going forward. So number 18 is to identify an entity to match landowners in the historic Gullah neighborhoods with applicable private developers to increase the landowners' odds of success with selling or developing their property. There has not been any progress to date on that. There were some strategies identified in an other 21 strategy document that was in our records. That's what we included in here. Certainly we would welcome some thoughts on that. We've made no progress to date on implementing this particular piece. Certainly we have some ideas of if it's a priority, how we could structure some of that. But we would welcome, more thoughts from you on what's included both in the report and what we're talking about here on how to implement this particular item. And now we're going to move into the public policy side. Again, in this one, we're only going to include PP 1 through 4 in the presentation today, and the remainder will come at a future meeting. We certainly have all of the slides that we could pull up. If you had a report item from the public policy category or implementation strategy that you wanted to talk about, we could fast forward to that if we need to. But you'll notice that in the public policy section, there are a number of higher priority projects that are in orange, as well as quite a few that are in blue that were in the other 21 priority area. So the first one, PP1, was an other 21 priority project, and this one was to allow waivers for development application fees, establish a grant program to assist property owners to pay for specific development impact fees within the overlay that had been proposed. Certainly, we have programs in place now that would be a progress step through both the sewer connection program and the home safety and repair that are alleviating some of the barriers for at least development impact with the sewer connection fees that are affiliated with adding another development residence. There are also some additional strategies that are identified here that could be implemented to fully implement this particular project goal. So I do think that there's been significant progress made, but how we fully implement this goal, we would welcome feedback from you. PP2 was to fast track the review process for development applications within the overlay. We have done a prioritization for family compound and family subdivision applications, and also have an expedited review requirement for design studio requests. So those are already in place. Again, we could create a standard operating procedure internally to make sure that that is institutionalized for all staff, current staff and future staff. So that's what we recommend for that. PP3 is to work with, now it's a different title, the Senior Planner, Cultural and Historic position to work closely with property and business owners in our neighborhoods to help them navigate town regulations. And certainly we've created the design studio. We have a report later in the agenda to go over its success. But within that design studio, we highlight in a biweekly meeting among staff regular development barriers or themes we see with questions that we're working through with design studio applicants. So we'll continue to do that. And again, we'll create that standard operating procedure to make sure that this is part of our regular ongoing business activities within the town to prioritize and fast track these types of reviews. So this item, PP4, is the overlay recommendation. It's also a standalone agenda item as Agenda 7B on today's agenda. There's quite a bit of progress identified in the written report, and it goes from two and a half pages of the critical path as well as progress to implement this particular item. We are going to be talking later. There's a staff report on the Mid-Island development area, and there is some implementation steps for the historic neighborhoods within that district that we'll talk about in that agenda item that I think will achieve part of what's being recommended here. 2 months ago when we met, we talked about that we were looking at folding in this recommendation instead of through an overlay, but through a base zoning structure where it wouldn't be through the overlay. So so that's what we're looking into now. And that's what we have detailed in the lengthy 2.5 pages of progress notes within the report. Since this is a separate standalone agenda item, does anyone have any questions about that particular item before I move on?
Get there later with that section of the agenda.
Turn your mic on.
So your question was, are we, until we get to that item in the agenda?
That's up to the chair. We could certainly discuss it now and fold it in as it's the same agenda item that we have up on the screen is the overlay. It just has been asked that that be a standing agenda item that's on every agenda to have the overlay on there.
Yeah, I don't mind if we ask some questions along the way, but I kind of want to let her get through the presentation. And it is on the agenda, so we can kind of dive into it a little bit more.
We can dive later if you want. So plug along.
Yes.
Okay. So here, you'll notice in your document, there are far more public policy report items that we deferred to the next meeting, but we'll pick back up on page 17 with heirs property. So here, the first one, HP1, was one of our critical top 16 items, and it was to utilize the Heritage Library Foundation as a first step toward clearing titles and overcome heirs property, excuse me. And again, the Family Research Project has been launched and is in place, and we think one of the other action steps is to continue to promote that, but also to have more information on that resource center that we talked about previously. HP2 is to leverage a range of local, state, and national organizations involved with addressing heirs property issues to maximize the island's potential to address the issue. This is something that we could, we already have all of these resources, all of these organizations are currently in our education area. Certainly we could, again, like we said before, enhance that resource center to be a more interactive and easy to find resource for people, because we already include all of these wonderful organizations and how to reach them on our website. I just don't think it's very well known that the information is out there. So that's what we propose to do for this one. HP3 is the satellite office. Encourage the Center for Heirs Property to open a satellite office. We have checked on this. It was during the pandemic. We think we need to check in again and see if this is worth pursuing. But at the time, there was not interest. So the plan is to check again and see if there is additional interest in having an actual office. If not, we would like to discuss if we have a more robust Gullah Resource Center, if that achieves the goal, and we're able to come to consensus on that. So HP4 is the Gullah Task Force recommends that NYPD work with the Community Foundation of the Low Country to set up a fund to pay for the cost of clearing title for heirs property. We currently don't have any progress steps to date on implementing this particular item, but we could certainly set up the meetings. And we already have a list of items that we could discuss with NYPD, and we could add this to that meeting and brainstorm opportunities of how to implement this particular report item. So that is all I have as far as the new structure and going over at a high level what we have included in the document. Again, it's there's more detail in the report that's in the packet, and we're really looking for, some consensus on the critical path and the path and the progress steps to get there. And then at some point, when we're able to weigh in on the level of completeness or grading, have we accomplished these recommendation goals or not, we'll have that conversation when we're ready. But that's what we're looking for, and we hope that this format and structure will walk all of the report recommendations forward to hopefully getting them all implemented. So that's the goal.
Okay, before I open it up to my colleagues, I just want to make a couple of comments. As was mentioned before, there's several other organizations or resources that were mentioned in this report to maybe implement some of those things. As most of you know, we did this report some time ago, and probably some things have changed. And I guess one of the critical pieces in my mind is certainly the implementation or the hiring of that historic preservation administrator to help move some of these things along. Also, there was quite a few references to the Office of Cultural Affairs. So there's an opening there as well as Missy Lewick mentioned. So there's some opportunities to work together with that office, certainly when we have someone in place in that position. And also throughout the report, other organizations were mentioned such as NYPD and Center for Heirs Property and things like that. That's why I said we certainly want to look at this report with fresh eyes today to see if those things are actually still relevant and if that's going to be actually the best way forward. I do know the folks at NYPD very well, and I know they have a lot on their plate. So I think in one of our previous meetings, we mentioned that we would certainly consider looking for other resources or find ways to help them get some of those programs going, but that may take another path. And even for some of the things that were, well, one of the things that was mentioned here today, like the open air market and how that even relates to the pop-up shops, things like that, those are, in my mind, very, very closely related. And the last thing I wanted to mention that I think is going to help move a lot of these along as well is that we are certainly watching from some sort of a distance of what happens with our Community Development Corporation. That Economic Development Corporation, I also think would be an important piece for the historic administrator to work with that will help move some of these recommendations along. I do know that this is something that Mr. Hintz has been asking us about at just about every meeting, is to kind of have this in front of us so that we continue to be educated as well on the report and we know what we're looking at. And I appreciate you putting this together, not just the 16 top priority recommendations. but all of them. And in the past, we've recognized some of them as what we called low-hanging fruit. When we mentioned the Resource Center, I know that certainly as we've gone through the pandemic, we've had to do a lot of things online and on the internet. But we're certainly hoping that we'll have some physical space too, where folks can come to the town and see these reports or get the education that they need. So I just want my colleagues to kind of keep that in mind, and of course the public here as well. As we, if you have any questions or comments, I would invite you at this time. Mr. Malik?
Yeah, maybe just one thought, maybe one or two thoughts. Regarding the town's Human Resources Department, is there any kind of orientations that take place now when new persons are brought on for hiring?
Oh, yes, there's a robust onboarding with numerous trainings and orientation programs and the council ambassador program, quite a few opportunities.
So my question is, in light of that, I know you mentioned that you wanted the educational program to be pushed back until we get that historical liaison in place. But in light of the fact that we have a Human Resources Department that does some kind of orientation, could we not have that program kind of sort of co-fostered by HR until that person's in place?
We could look at it. The structure of how it would be implemented was included in the documentation that this body voted on and the others, but certainly cross-training of that program. Oh, I welcome Carolyn.
Hi, Carolyn Grant, Communications Director. The town is starting to include Gullah tours in employee orientation, and that will be starting this month, actually. So all employees will now be required to take the Gullah tour when they're hired.
Okay, and maybe once the program is once we get an actual chance to see more of the program itself, we can maybe make some recommendations as to what can be bulleted as a part of orientation until we get the full program in place.
Sure.
Right, yeah, so that's a first step.
Thank you. On this one item, it's not a priority, but the one that CP 18 that calls for landowners to be paired up with potential private developers.
Yes.
Critical path suggests that the town should not be a part of that. But now, wouldn't it be necessary for the town to certainly be aware of that partnership so that the family and the potential developer and the town are on the same page as they try to move forward?
Oh, yes, definitely. Certainly be a part of the conversation for what development is feasible and possible. That's the town's role in all future development and opportunity, is to kind of gauge that or offer that metric of, yeah, your density is this, you could build this many square feet of that.
Okay.
So that would be the town's role, certainly, but maybe not in the actual matching of landowners with developers, with
Okay.
private developers. That's the part.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Malik. Mr. Hintz?
First of all, any chance of us getting the invitation to go with the new staff on those Gullah tours? I think that would be a great education. I know for me it would.
Agreed. We'll put in that suggestion.
Missy, you did a really good job of condensing a whole lot of work, a lot of effort, and a lot of items. And so, I mean, one of the things that I'm thinking of is there's just so much going on.
Yeah.
is there a guiding light or a vision that we have for, that ties all of this together? Is there a view to what we would like to strive for? And I'm sure I got in late, but all of these things are for a purpose to get us somewhere. Is there a description, a brief, a painting of that vision?
I'm sure it's painted in here. There's a purpose statement. I'd have to
Yes.
reread it to see if that is painting that clear vision and path forward as we accomplish all of these things, and we're.
Yeah, when we
Yeah.
get an A+ on all of these things,
Right.
what will it look like?
I'll have to reread that project purpose statement, and we should probably lead with that next time. Agreed.
Thank you.
And I may be able to help you out a little bit, but of course, several years ago, when the town identified the Gullah Geechee culture as something that was kind of endangered, and that's where the efforts were put in place to preserve the culture, and hence out of the Planning Commission, the task force was created. So that's a lot of why we're here now. I think that part of the questions you're asking about is certainly clear leadership. And so good luck with that. But that's why we're here. And we're hoping that our policymakers will hear most, if not everything, that we're doing at this level. That is the goal. What will that look like? Hopefully we will stop losing properties. Folks will be able to do things with their property. We'll have understanding about what we can do in the community that are related to the culture as well. That's part of it that I can help with. Mr. Simmons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I have a question of clarification. It seems like a lot, as Mr. Hans just said, this is a lot of information. And I guess I heard you say that a lot of this is going to hinge on if an administrator is hired in order to move forward. Is that exactly it? If we do not have an administrator, some of this will not move forward? Or which parts of it will or will not?
Well, we have a vacancy for the Senior Planner, Cultural and Historic Preservation position, which used to be the Historic Neighborhood Administrator. The title changed, but it's the role of the person that would staff the task force and be the main implementer of all of the report items. So that person would be working on all of this implementation within, my oversight under Community Planning Division. So yes, we plan to fill that vacancy and have somebody who's actively working, picking up the phone and making calls and advancing all of these to completion. So we will fill that position, yes.
Okay, so I guess my question still remains. So if we don't have that person, do these just become status quo? Do they not move forward? Is that without that person in place, it stays just a thought?
Well, with the capacity we have right now, I'm doing the best I can to advance what we have. We're trying, and we would like to, I would love to advance all of these items at a quicker clip than they are right now, certainly. And yes, it's going to require we have to have the capacity to do that within the organization.
Yeah, I guess my question then is, if someone is not hired, is there a plan B to move this forward? Because what I hear you saying is that without that person in place, this is not going to move forward because there's not the capacity at the town level now to move what is now presented forward without the person in place.
I hope we don't have to discuss a plan B and that we can move ahead. So if we have to get there to a plan B, I don't even know what that looks like yet, Mr. Simmons.
And I guess I'm just hearing that, I just hear that a lot of work's going to be sitting on somebody's desk somewhere without the person in place. And then, of course, there's, what's this other person also that you need to hire? Neighborhood Preservation Administrator, another new position? Is that
Office of Cultural Affairs Director, yeah.
Cultural affairs.
So that's one in the same position as well.
Two separate positions,
Right.
yeah.
So, so there we have. There's a lot, unless we get these people in place, you know, it sounds like a lot of information, good information, that's gonna be sitting somewhere. So I guess that's why I asked, you know, is there a plan B? Because if you don't hire someone, there again, a lot of information is gonna be sitting somewhere on somebody's desk,
Understood.
so.
Well, I think that you're actually talking to Plan B, and you're talking to that somebody's desk where that stuff is sitting now, so.
Well, it's not gonna help us, and that's gonna help the community on somebody's desk. I mean,
Yeah,
You
but
know,
I-
that's, you know, I mean, and that's no reflection on anyone and all of us who has been working. I mean, obviously, you don't get this report without somebody working. You know, the idea of somebody working goes back to what Tom said earlier. What is the bottom line goal and what's the picture? You know, if the picture is already painted, we still have to get there. And I just, you know, it would be not good if all the, doesn't line up and this comes to fruition. I mean, it would be, I don't think that's gonna be very pretty,
Yeah,
you know.
I think the point is well understood, sir. Is that it?
Thank you, yeah, that's my point.
Mr. Campbell?
Questions?
Turn your mic on for me.
CP 14, I was wondering, is NYPD still involved?
In the market,
Yeah.
they indicated they didn't have maybe all of the capacity to do a regular market. They did like a one-time episodic market that was successful at Low Country Celebration. We certainly intend to reach out to them further, talk about other strategies, work with other market vendors on what does their operational plan look like, who conducts it, who's involved, is there a collaboration? There may be some other structures to look at instead of just saying, okay, NYPD, you launched this thing. There could be some other way to do it, and I think there is. And so we just have to do that legwork to reach out to other market vendors, as well as circle back to NYPD and see what level of interest they do have capacity for, and could they operate or manage a portion of it? And then, you know, so we just have some more exploring to do on that one.
Okay, because I flipped over to page 6, and at the bottom, that paragraph said NYPD has identified a market manager.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So I was wondering, is that true, and who's that market manager is?
I would have to look in the notes. Certainly, I wasn't involved in that meeting, so I just have to look in through the files and find out where that progress step came from. Certainly, it was probably from a meeting several months back, but I can check.
Okay. And page 4, CP 11, says providing technical financial support. What kind of financial support will you be providing for businesses?
Which one? Page 11 you said, and where?
That's, page 4, CP 11.
Oh, page 4. This is one where that, I believe, Shay, that critical path came from an older document that included possible paths forward for those non-priority items. Is that correct? Where you got that one from?
Yeah, I basically pulled the actual language directly from, I'm sorry, for the record, I pulled the language directly from the original report.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
You good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Just to follow up on that question, Mr. Campbell, we did have representatives from SCORE at one of our meetings. I'm sure it was well over, maybe about a year ago now. So there has been some discussion on that, but I don't think we've made much more progress on that. And again, in my mind, those kinds of efforts and that recommendation in particular may be something that will help, will come from like an economic corporation development.
All right.
So that's why I say, even as we look at this report, and as Ms. Farrar said, she just pulled that language forward, we have to look at this with some fresh eyes and see if some of these things need to be revised or see where we are. And then we can actually grade ourselves, and hopefully we can get to that A+ status. And also trying to address the other concerns that we had. Missy Lewick and other staff members I know, and Missy in particular, she and I have been having some conversations and kind of getting together and see where we are. So I do appreciate this report. But just to maybe address some of that anxiety, we're going to keep working on it. We're going to keep pushing forward. We hopefully will have a historic preservation administrator in place. And if you could maybe remind us that that title has now changed. It is, what is the actual title?
Senior Planner in Cultural and Historic Preservation.
Can you say that again?
Senior, I know, it's way too long. It's the acronym of 5 letters. Senior Planner of Cultural and Historic Preservation.
Okay. So
How did we get to that change?
probably the restructuring from the town manager or somebody, with staff. So. And it's basically going to be fulfilling the same duties, though, right?
Correct.
But it's just more of a, what's the difference in that and what was previously, there much? I think that's the question, right?
I think the title changed. I'm not sure of what substance in the
Right.
job description.
Yeah.
It may, there were some changes organization-wide with some
Right.
title changes to adjust certain titles. And there aren't as many administrator titles out there anymore. So I think it was just to kind of create more uniform structure. That's what I think.
Yeah,
with
we
the
know
title.
that with the town manager who has been here for, I guess, it's a little over a year now, there was some restructuring with staff, so there's probably been some name changes, but I don't think that the responsibility or the duties have changed with that position. But we're going to keep working and trying to move forward. Okay? If there are no more questions on this particular item, I want to try to move the agenda. You guys good? Okay, thank you, Missy. Okay, so this is item 7B, update on Historic Districts Overlay District. Now, I think someone had some questions about that earlier, but I'll let you share whatever you have for us, if there's anything.
So certainly, as we discussed before, and what was included in the PP4 recommendation is that, and it's way back on page 13, is that we were looking to the Mid-Island redevelopment strategy planning process and recommendations within the historic neighborhoods in that particular redevelopment area to provide some base zoning changes and recommendations. So look to that, and that report is coming up next. And there's a meeting this Wednesday to talk about the Mid-Island. There's a workshop with Town Council to talk about Mid-Island and all of the recommendations coming out of that. Some of those strategies could help us implement this particular report item. And so that's kind of where we're headed with that.
Okay, questions? That is, of course, that's a work in progress as well, so.
Yes. Yes, I have a comment. It appears that last time, if we recall, when we set out some of the guidelines, went out for the buffers and setback, all of those seem to have gone through as outlined from the task force or as we studied. But then, as it turned out, we understood that there was a requirement for planting that sort of then overshadowed all that had been accomplished by the setback. So, there again, it seems like, those items that, lightens the load, then something else comes up that once again, creates a hurdle again for moving small projects forward. So I just always like to ask, when these other items come up, they're a way to sort of neutralize that which have gone forward. So it seems like, we missed that happy median where the requested setbacks and all come in, we get those, but then when you have to do 10 times the planting, then the buffers may not have the kind of value. So I just say that as to when we move these forward, is that we find that we have the items that match. We have these unmatching items that come up and sort of, appears that it's the 2 steps forward and 3 steps back kind of thing. So
Sure. We didn't go through PP5. It was in the list for the next month, but that's the one where there's the goal for to create family compound provisions. And of course, we enacted family compound and family subdivision. And at our last meeting 2 months ago, we talked about that there are some additional challenges that have surfaced, and the landscaping was one of those. And just know that we have included in our list of LMO amendments, in our Tier 3 priority list of LMO amendments, to relook at family compound and family subdivision and make sure that we'll take a closer look now that we have had something on the books. We've worked with families to try to implement based on what code was adopted, and we have some ideas of how we could fix the code to implement better this report recommendation. So just note that that is certainly on the list, and it currently is included within our long list of all of the requested LMO amendments. So. But just to get into that particular example, we duly noted, and that it's on a list to get fixed. Okay.
Other questions?
Again, you guys are moving forward. I'm stepping you back, and I apologize for that, but what's the purpose for the overlay district?
The purpose for the overlay district was to implement a range of recommended land development strategies within the report, and it was just the structure. We think that through base zoning changes, we can implement the task objectives, but just through a different structure. So instead of an overlay that applies, and you have to go to a separate chapter and look up these regulations, we're hoping your property is zoned, say RM4, you go to the RM4 section, it tells you what you can do through base zoning. And so you don't have to flip there and find out what you're zoned and then go look at the overlay and look at a bunch of different standards in the overlay, that we can streamline the process and make it easier for everyone to implement.
Know what they can do.
Correct, yeah. So base zoning, still achieving the goals and objectives from a number of the report recommendations within the public policy section. So we're still looking at the intent of those recommendations, and hope that we can just achieve them through a different format or structure within the code instead of an overlay.
Other questions? Yeah.
My question was, with you being promoted to a new position, when that senior planning person come on board, will this work still fall under your wheelhouse?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
So that is our plan B.
You're looking at her. Plan B.
Other questions on this item? Okay, thank you. Great job, Missy. That brings us down to staff report. And I'll let staff take it from here. It's the Missy Lewick Show.
Yes, I'm giving all the report updates, sorry. As I alluded to for the Mid-Island District, this Wednesday at 9 o'clock, Town Council is doing a workshop, and it will consider redevelopment strategies and initiatives for the Mid-Island District and the Mid-Island Tract. It includes conceptual phase plans for construction of the 103-acre park that's proposed, as well as a district-wide redevelopment strategy. There are 5 historic neighborhoods within the district area boundary, and this Gullah Geechee Culture Preservation Project report was used within the report framework to provide district recommendations. And next month, as we had already indicated, the consultants are programmed. We hope that they'll be here before your board to kind of go over what's proposed in the Mid-Island District area.
What
So-
time is that workshop on Wednesday? It's going
9
to be here?
o'clock.
Here in the chambers?
Yes, correct.
9 o'clock
here.
Wednesday morning.
They just changed it? Is that housing at 8 and then okay, so they'll talk about housing at 8 and the Mid-Island at 9, right? Okay, that just happened? Okay,
Okay.
time change. 8 o'clock, wake up earlier. Any questions about that?
On the Mid-Island Redevelopment District update? Okay. Historic Neighborhood Design Studio Report. As you can see, all of these items are so related.
They are.
Yeah.
So that report was included in your packet, and we have had now 41 design studio service requests. I've outlined sort of how many have been completed, withdrawn, how many are active, and so that data is in there. Again, as we discussed, this is a design studio is like a collaborative, interactive planning process with an applicant, and the applicant gets a team of town staff members to work with based on whatever development questions they're looking at. And so we've listed the range of issues that have been discussed in design studios. And again, it's more of a collaborative, interactive process. And a lot of them are kind of on hold status, either waiting for more information from the applicant, for families to get together, have a family meeting and talk about kind of how they want to proceed. But we work with, we're working actively with a number of families, again, on a lot of land development questions. And most of them include the creation of a concept plan or maybe multiple concept plans to go over possible development scenarios that they might be looking at on their property.
Questions?
How do you describe a completed case? Does that mean they came to you, you put together a design, and they have a piece of property that's been totally developed?
Completed would be that it could be, if it wasn't a development project, it could be that they had a question or inquiry that required multiple departments to provide an answer and it was adequately addressed. If it's a development project, I would gauge design studio as complete as to when the applicant moves from the conceptual design studio phase and has made an application for whatever development type they're seeking. So it's an actual project then. They've advanced to.
Okay. Okay, so that means that they've completed the design part. The application process still has to take place, and then the build-up has to be completed.
That's correct.
Okay.
And they would remain with the same planner that was identified during their design studio process. So they have a resource person throughout the rest of the process. But when the conceptual phase that design studio handles is completed, then I mark that as complete. The design studio is complete.
Okay.
Other questions? Okay, great. Thank you, Missy. The next item I have on the agenda is Town Open Positions Update.
So we had the job opportunity bulletin as of packet publishing that was in the packet. I emailed you last Friday the latest openings that we got from the HR director. We'll continue to give you those updates. Please do forward those to anyone within your circles. We're always actively recruiting for all of our positions. So there's, again, 2 of them that directly impact the Gullah Geechee Task Force, as we've already identified, the Senior Planner, Cultural and Historic Preservation, and then the Director of Cultural Affairs. But certainly there's 911, Public Safety Telecommunicator Trainee, Administrative Report, Building Inspector, Firefighters, Facilities Techs, Stormwater Manager, Transportation Engineer. That's the list we have open right now.
Okay, any questions on this item? Pretty straightforward. Okay, if there are no questions, we'll move on. The Home Safety and Repair Program update.
All right, in your packet, so I'm going to do both home safety and sewer connect kind of together. But for home safety and repair in your packet, there was the contractors needed flyer. So we've launched the home safety and repair program in July. We are now at the step where we need to get qualified contractors to do the work to implement the program. So if you know anyone within your contacts that is a contractor, we really encourage them to apply. My contact information is included on the flyer. They can apply through me or get further information about the contractors that we're looking for the program. But generally, we're looking for general contractors, carpenters, electricians, HVAC, roofers, tree experts, painters, that kind of thing. So overall with the program, as of last Friday, these are the numbers, they change daily. For home safety and repair, we have 62 applications received. 33 of those have already been vetted and approved, meaning that they meet the income qualifications, and we're advancing them through site visits and then implementation. We're working with, right now, about 16 of them have their information sent over for income verification step. And then 10 of those have, we need additional information from them, so their applications are incomplete, and we're working with those applicants. And then 3 applicants did not meet the income qualifications, so they did not meet the program requirements. For the sewer connection program, we've had 8 applications turned in, and 4 of them have had the town letter of approval, and 4 of them are waiting for PSD to provide the estimate for that connection. So a lot of activity, a lot of interest, and it's a lot of work.
And could you remind us again of how it was advertised and put out there?
Sure. So both programs were launched in early July. Both of them were funded through the American Rescue Plan Act, so the town received some funding. The Home Safety and Repair Program has a total of $400,000 that was awarded, and the Sewer Connection Program has $200,000 total. Certainly, we have more applicants in home safety and repair currently than we can fund. We're likely going to find some additional resources to continue the program. I can say from doing some of the site visits, there's an extraordinary need in the community for these services in this program. There's a $15,000 limit per household. And I'll just say that probably $15,000 is only going to make a small dent in some of the repairs that are needed in some of these homes. So it's a much needed program, and I'm happy that we got it launched and off the ground. And so we're really looking for those contractors. So again, we don't have very many who have applied yet. So please, if you know anyone, encourage them to participate in the program so we can get people on the ground to do the work that's needed.
Okay. Questions? Okay, I'm going to let you do this last item, and then I'll invite some comments from the public, and I should have done that along the way. But if you want to go ahead, and that was the sewer connection program? You already did that?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, good. Good job. Okay, thank you, Missy. But as we said, a lot of information, and kind of going through that helps to educate us and hopefully educate our public. Are there anyone here present in the public that has any questions about any of these items that we've just discussed? Mr. Scott.
Good afternoon. Ty Scott. Actually, just some questions, some statements, and probably some recommendations or clarification. There was a whole lot of information that was presented, so I tried to take some notes as we were going, and I probably skipped over a lot of the stuff. But one thing that was mentioned was the, I'm not sure which category it was in, but it made reference to funds being available for like fees and things of that nature. I know that Beaufort County currently has a waiver of fees in place, you know, that the town of Hilton Head does not have, and that's based on impact fees, and that's based on your income. That's a program that's already slated, is in place, that we can mimic here on Hilton Head, because you have, you know, a lot of folks that would qualify for waiver of the impact fees, but they just don't know about it. I mean, I've worked with citizens here who qualified. Beaufort County would waive the impact fee, but Hilton Head didn't have anything in place to waive the fee. So it's an opportunity to help people out. That's there, it's in place, and I think we just probably need to dig a little bit deeper into to find out how they got it implemented and how we can kind of piggyback on what they're doing as well. And it's probably been mentioned, the pop-up shops and the you know, in the community. I think that we need to grab that opportunity. I know that at one time there was like $100,000 that was slated for task force to work with, I don't know, promoting what the task force was doing. You know, if those funds, I mean, I'm not sure if they have depleted, but if there's funds available that can be utilized, you know, for young entrepreneurs to help advertise what they're doing, to contact and, you know, reach out to the public through some of those funds, if they're available some kind of way, because I know we did use some of those funds at one time just for advertising a meeting, you know, so if there was an opportunity afforded to the pop-up shops, taking advantage of that opportunity with the funds. And I agree that those pop-up shops or markets should remain in our community. They should not be, in my opinion, down on the south end. I mean, we need to get people into our community to cater to our businesses at home. I mean, I think the South End has enough tourists down there. The Chamber and everybody else does enough with promoting tourists down there. You know, let's get them into our communities to support our young entrepreneurs. CP11 talked about funds for products and services. Again, the $100,000 if there's a way. The other thing I really want some clarification, and I think I watched the meeting here the other day. I think Sean Collin made a comment about the workforce density and the bonus densities that's afforded for workforce housing. And I just want more clarification. If someone was proposing to develop their property for workforce housing, are they allotted the bonus density to be increased based on the amount of homes or units that can be slated for workforce? So if I have a 4 units per acre zone and I have an acre and I build and I present an option for 8 units of being workforce, will I be allowed to do that? You know, if my zoning is only zoned 4 units per acre. My understanding was, I mean, just listening to the comment, how it was presented, that if you present your property as workforce housing, you are allotted, you can be qualified for that workforce housing. Is there a way that can be clarified?
I can talk about that.
Yeah, okay. All right, yeah, I just need to understand. I thought it was based on a certain amount of acreage or something like that at one time. But it came out as though if you presented it as a workforce housing development, you can get your density doubled. So, I mean, if that opportunity is there and it's been changed, then I think a lot of people need to know about it. And if it's not, then it may be something to consider. And I think that covers some of the stuff that I was able to jot down. Okay, appreciate it.
Thank you. Those are very good questions, Missy. You took note of that. Yeah. Okay. Would you like to speak to that now? Please. Because I think we had some questions up here as well. And including your answer for us, what percentage of the projects in place now have to be workforce housing if you're doing other developments or just a regular development? Is it 20%? Is it 15%?
Right now, well, I'll just back up. So for workforce housing, we do have a program that allows density bonus. And so there are conditions for that approval. So workforce housing is a conditional use in our code, and it is allowed in the RM4 district for properties that are 3 acres in size or greater. And there are a number of other conditions that have to be met. In the workforce housing section, there is a density bonus that can be offered based on the number of units that the developer is proposing to meet workforce and meet a certain percentage of AMI. And so it can be up to 12 units per acre is the maximum that you could go as far as what's applicable through that program. And then there are also, in the commercial districts, there's a commercial conversion component for workforce housing where you would convert existing commercial square footage to workforce housing. And there are certain densities that can be applied based on a square footage requirement per bedroom or efficiency or whatnot. And currently, we don't have in place a requirement that all developments have a certain percent that are workforce.
So if I understood the question too, for smaller parcels, if you only had an acre, is there an opportunity to do workforce housing if you identified?
Not through the town's workforce housing program as enacted currently, no. And if the workforce housing amendment, there's an interactive map of properties that are eligible. And on the town's website, a lot of these major initiatives, including the Gullah Geechee report and all of its work, are under the major initiatives tab. Workforce housing is on there, and all of the program qualifications are there, as well as an interactive map that shows all the properties that are eligible within our program.
Okay. I think that answered a lot of questions.
I have a
Okay. Okay.
I have a question. When you look in the Gullah community, very seldom do you see an individual with the 3-acre parcel in their name. Would this housing bonus apply to heirs property as well? So let's say you have a family that has, they're living on the property, but they have a 5-acre tract. Could they implement some workforce housing on that plot of heirs property along with them living there as well?
Sure, there's a number of conditions to be met, and then the workforce housing program to get that density bonus comes with a workforce housing agreement that's adopted by town council and the property owners to agree to some of the conditions that are placed on the property. There's a long-term restriction on, say, short-term rentals and some other things that are required.
So it could be done?
It could.
Okay.
If the heirs property allows, additional development and that kind of thing, and they meet the program requirements.
And you said that the requirements now are based on how it's stated. So even as it's stated right now with the 3-acre minimum, there's a possibility that could even change. Am I right?
Well, certainly there's a lot of housing discussions going on right now.
Okay.
And so there could be some changes down the road to our policies.
Because again, when you look at our holdings, very few members in our community would have that 3-acre parcel to use for workforce housing.
That's correct. And that's meeting our definition of
Okay.
workforce housing. And certainly there are a lot of other affordable housing components, within the historic neighborhoods where it's not meeting the definition of workforce housing, where it's income qualified and you're reviewing somebody's financials to make sure they don't meet or exceed, a certain percent of AMI. So,
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry you had a question.
I guess my quick question of clarification, workforce housing, you get the density if you have 3 acres or more, is what the.
through the program that we have enacted currently, yes, that's the way that it was structured. So
So-
it's eligible in RM4 properties if they're 3 acres and larger, and there's a couple other conditions as well, but that's the main one.
Okay, and that's for the density requirement. You could not have property defined as workforce housing if you had less than 3 acres?
To meet our program requirements, yes, currently,
Yeah,
yeah.
I guess that's right, okay. You can only have workforce housing if you have 3 or more acres.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
It's what we have in the books now, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Missy. Anyone else from the public have a question or comment? If you could state your name for us one more time, please. I think we should remember, but
Okay, Tracy Young.
thank you.
I just have a question about the home safety and repair program project. Like, Missy stated that they would only do $15,000, and like some of the homes that she went into need more than $15,000 work. Well, the Bluffton, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Bluffton community. If it's more than $15,000, they recommend a total demolition of the home, and then offer assistance to replacing with like a mobile home. Is that available in Hilton Head? Instead of, doing $15,000 in work and then he needs $30,000 in work or 25, they just say flatten the surface, demolish it, and offer assistance with getting a new home. Because, I know a lot of people home who would qualify, but it's a $15,000 cap. That's my question.
Okay. Got it. If you want to answer that or not.
Currently, our program, we do not
I'm
have.
sorry, before you do that, I just
Yes.
want to acknowledge Joyce Wright. I think she's getting ready to leave. Joyce, thank you for being here. We look forward to you joining us at another time.
Currently as structured, our program covers 3 main areas. One is home safety and repair. The other is demolition of an unsafe structure, and then hazardous tree removal. However, if a home needs more than $15,000 worth of work, it was envisioned as a 2-year program where they could reapply the next year. And we do not have a program in place currently where we would demolish the home and find other opportunities for a replacement at this time. So no. Unfortunately, the answer is no.
Hopefully that'll be something we can look at in the future as well. There are other programs out there in the county that's doing that. Okay, anyone else? Okay, with that, we're down to the last item on the agenda, which is adjournment. But before I do, I definitely want to acknowledge Linda Pica from the Heritage Library for being here and the program that you have working with one of our recommendations, and we hope we will continue to try to energize that program. Yes. Okay, great. And again, Councilman Brown, thank you for being here. Of course, our communication director, Ms. Carolyn Grant, and the rest of the staff for the work that you're doing. And of course, Missy Lewick, our Plan B, and the main attraction for the day. With all the answers, and if not, she will certainly do what she can to find them. And then for those of you who are in the public, thank you for being here and help spread the word about the good work that we're trying to do here to preserve this Gullah Geechee culture for the betterment of the total community. If there are no other questions or comments, I will entertain a motion to be adjourned.
So moved.
I've got a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We find ourselves adjourned. Thank you so much. Have a great day.